Welcome to Astrology for Awakening, where we look at the astrological aspects of the moment, the spirit of the times, as Jung called it, and we also open through those portals to the spirit of the depths, to the deep invitation of these aspects to commune with and awaken to the sacred. So we're looking today at the Sun in Virgo, opposition to Neptune in Pisces, and then there's this square to the Moon in Sagittarius. So it's kind of a crisis of belief, if you will, a crisis of belief which allows us to highlight and open up to and dissolve erroneous beliefs into a new revelation. I'm naming this, titling this conversation, Bellevue or God, in honor of an old friend who's no longer on the earth plane, Garth, who way back in the day, in the late 60s, was on a psychedelic trip walking through New York City, and he began to realize he was at this tipping point, which is like an opposition. He was at this tipping point where it was either Bellevue or God. Now, Bellevue, if you're not familiar, is the oldest public hospital in the United States, and at the time it was primarily a psychiatric hospital. So he realized he was at this very delicate place where consciousness was opening up, but perhaps was going to crack up. Neptune opposition the Sun brings us to that delicate balance between awakening and Bellevue or God. Now, the Sun is the inner radiance. The Sun is the radiance as it manifests through the unique body-mind system. And when we're aligned with that solar energy, we have an innate sense of life vitality, of purposefulness, and of alignment with what's called in yoga swadharma, your unique purpose and expression in this life. The way that spirit is arising and calling you to realize, embody, and express that sacred nature in the unique form of your solar radiance. Now, the shadow side of the Sun, and remember, all archetypal energies have this dual expression of life enriching and also of life contracting energies. The shadow Sun, if you will, shifts this sense of alignment and aliveness that comes when we're truly embodying the radiance into a kind of hubris, a kind of narcissistic dharma, where we forget basically that the Sun, and each of us is like that Sun, individual radiance, that the Sun is also a star, right? The Sun is also a star. It may be the center of this solar system, but it's not the center of the cosmos. And so when we are in touch with our Sun energy, we're in touch with the center of our unique microcosmic incarnation. But it's not the same as going, I am the light of the world, okay? And Neptune becomes a wonderful corrective in that oppositional aspect for this sense of hubris and specialness, because Neptune is the energy that dissolves all certainty into kind of into a like undefinable wondering, a kind of non-specific, diaphanous field of subtle possibilities. And all sense of uniqueness or specialness is dissolved into this oceanic sense of oneness with Neptune. So this is the invitation of Neptune opposed the Sun, that we will wake up to our radiance, but not personalize it in a way that leads to a kind of separation of our sacred nature from the sacred nature of existence itself. And this is beautifully described in two very sacred spiritual stories, one from the 20th century and one from the 5th century. Okay, the first one, the 20th century, is an experience that the great American spiritual teacher Ram Dass often related when he was visiting a relative who was not in Bellevue, but was in a psychiatric facility in California, and he met with this person who said, "I am God." So he'd had that revelation. This person had touched that sacred radiance beyond the body, beyond the conditioned mind, beyond the personality. He had touched that radiance and realized, "I am God." And Ram Dass said, "Yes, you are, and so am I." "No," was the response. "I am, not you." Not them, pointing to the other patients and the doctors, me. And Ram Dass' response is, "That's why you're in here and I'm free." Okay, because this kind of awakening had become angular, had become imbalanced into delusions of spiritual grandeur. And this is something that we see throughout history. There's an intoxication, which is the shadow of Neptune, that can feed this sense of specialness, especially as it opens us up to astral experiences, which can inflate the sense of sort of our own breakthrough awareness and even a messianic sense of self. So we want to balance these two energies, the radiance of the solar and the dissolving of the Neptune, the expansion of the Neptune. We want to balance them. We don't want to move. This is what the invitation is not to move into some sense of specialness and not to become lost in some sense of self-sacrificing victimization, which can be an impulse with Neptune, but to hold these two in balance, to recognize I am the radiance, and so is every other arising. Every other arising is also that radiance. And this is the image of Indra's net, a net of radiant jewels that is infinitely spread out through the cosmos. And every being in the universe is one of those jewels. And in that sense, there's this tremendous sense of equality, sacred equality, that connects all of us together. And at the same time, there's this mystery of the jewel, which is when you look into each jewel, you see within the jewel the whole net is reflected. So we are this unbelievable embodiment of the universe, and we're a part of that universe. In the Talmud, there was the expression that said to keep a piece of paper in each pocket, and one piece of paper would say, "God made the universe for you." That's the solar, the sun energy speaking. It's been made for me. And then in the other pocket, I'm nothing, just a speck of dust in a cosmic vastness. That's the Neptunian awareness. We need both of them as we return to our human embodiment with that sense of awe and the recognition that, yes, the divine is arising through me and as all life. Non-separation. But what does that mean? And this brings us to the 5th century story of Bodhidharma, the great teacher of Buddhism who brought the Dharma from China to Japan. And he is in China during this story, meeting with the emperor who'd heard about him. And the emperor had been converted to Buddhism and was building temples and all kinds of structures, religious structures. And he had Bodhidharma brought to him and basically had one question. The question was, what is the merit that I am gaining through building all of these temples and all of these edifices? Now remember, in conventional religious structures around the world, there is this idea that if we do good works, if we build temples, if we donate to the synagogue, if we pay for the for the pews, if we fund the expansion of the building, we are earning our way into the good graces of the divine. This is a common understanding. So the emperor said, "What merit am I gaining?" And Bodhidharma answered, "No merit at all." Now this part of the story is powerful that comes next, because the emperor said, "Who is it that's standing before me?" And Bodhidharma said, "I don't know." That's one of the great teachings of that school of meditation. I don't know. No matter how clearly the radiance arises, no matter how palpably, how profoundly the sense of awakening dawns in our own consciousness, Neptune says, don't reify that. Don't reify that and turn it into an achievement, like building a temple, like building an edifice. Don't turn it into achievement that somehow points back to you as the one who is gaining the merit. I don't know is the endless opening that Neptune is inviting. And that Neptune opposed the Sun is suggesting that with each awakening we arrive at a provisional revelation that will then dissolve into a deeper and deeper and endlessly ever new, ever blissful unfolding of that awakening energy. The Sun says, "Here I am," and Neptune says, dissolve the boundaries in the baptismal waters of blessing. Dissolve the revelation even into the alchemical solutio. And through a gracious, grace-filled process of unknowing, of I don't know, we open to a revelation beyond contrivance, from which the new sun, S-U-N, of our life rises. Sun opposed Neptune.